Good morning, y'all. My name is Lotus here with the conversations. This is the fourth episode of It's in a Book, and we've been reading The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, which you can find on Amazon. You can find an Audible, everything. I mean, you could probably listen to somebody else read this book to you, but this is just something to interact with y'all for me. I'm going to read this out loud to myself, so I thought, I'd share it with y'all too. So let's just review where we're at right now. So, in the beginning of this book, we talked about our belief system and how that belief system came to fruition, and how we just, as humans, have just re-subscribed to a vision, an objective, and like I said, a belief system that has been in place for 2 millennia. So what can we do as individuals to break the spells that basically plague our lives every single day? The curses that we put on ourselves with our words, because we're telling ourselves lies all the time. The curses that people that are broken put on us as well. How are we navigating those things? How are we course correcting ourselves so that we can create heaven here on earth instead of living in hell every day? How can we do that? With our first agreement. First agreement is being impeccable with your word, which means only speaking truth and love. If the words that are coming out of your mouth are not from a place of love first, truth second, then you are lying to yourself and you're lying to everybody around you. And when you do that, you create, you cause other people and yourself to subscribe to false beliefs, right? You can't change a feeling, but you can change a belief. You can change what you believe in. Like a couple weeks ago, I didn't believe in myself. Everybody around me telling me how wonderful I am and how great I am. I didn't believe a motherfucking word they said. Excuse my language. I didn't believe a fucking word they said. But now that I've been stepping away from all that negative self-talk and really listening to people, not just listening to people, but listening to God speak to me. I just shut up so that I could hear what he had to say to me. And this is what he told me. He told me that I made you perfect in my image. I made you perfect. So there is God in you, there is God in me. And God don't make mistakes. Right? So now I believe that God has a plan for me, right? That his plan is my plan. Does that make sense? All right, good. And then also not taking anything personally. All this stuff is just falling into place. As I'm reading this book to you and absorbing the information that I'm reading aloud to you, like I said, I'm reading this to myself as well. People try to stop you from your greatness because they don't see the greatness in themselves. Let me say that again. People will stop you from your greatness because they don't see the greatness in them. And also realizing that people are in different stages of their dream of reality. Some people are very conscious of what's going on. They know exactly what they're saying, how they're saying it. They are manipulating you. They are manipulating the situations as they go through life. And then there's people that don't even realize that they are doing those things. So I'm not going to take anything personally. So I applied for 25 jobs. Let's just say 25 jobs. And I get rejected for 23 and get 2 interviews. Why would I take on the responsibility of rejection or the feeling of rejection from those 23 people that missed their blessing of me? God put me on this earth to be a blessing. I'm a blessing. Everywhere I go, put a smile on somebody's face. Everywhere I go, I know that the people around me feel loved. I hope they do. And if they don't, then I still have work to do, right? So those are our first 2 agreements. Be impeccable with your word and don't take anything personally. Today we're going to start reading the 3rd agreement. And I don't remember what the 3rd agreement is. So let's see. My computer's decided to be a little glitchy right now, of course. All right. Let's go. The 3rd agreement is don't make any assumptions. Okay? Don't make any assumptions. The 3rd agreement is don't make assumptions. We have the tendency to make assumptions about everything. The problem with making assumptions is that we believe they are the truth. We could swear they are real. We make assumptions about what others are doing or thinking. We take it personally. Then we blame them and react by sending emotional poison with our word. This is why whenever we make assumptions, we're asking for problems. We make an assumption, we misunderstand, we take it personally, and we end up creating a whole big drama for what? Nothing. Right? All the sadness and drama you've lived in your life was rooted in making assumptions and taking things personally. Take a moment to consider the truth of this statement. The whole war of control between humans is about making assumptions and taking things personally. Our whole dream of hell is based on that. We create a lot of emotional poison just by making assumptions and taking it personally, because usually we start gossiping about our assumptions. Remember, gossiping is the way we communicate to each other in the dream of hell and transfer poison to one another, because we are afraid to ask for clarification. We make assumptions and believe we are right about the assumptions. Then we defend our assumptions and try to make someone else feel wrong. It is always better to ask questions than to make an assumption, because assumptions set us up for suffering. The big menote in the human mind creates a lot of chaos, which causes us to misinterpret everything and misunderstand everything. We only see what we want to see and hear what we want to hear. We don't perceive things the way they are. We have the habit of dreaming with no bias in reality. We literally dream things up in our imaginations because we don't understand something. We make an assumption about the meaning, and the truth comes out. The bubble of our dream pops, and we find out it's not what we thought it was at all. An example. We're walking in the mall and you see a person you like. That person turns to you and smiles and then walks away. You can make a lot of assumptions just because of this one experience. With these assumptions, you can create a whole fantasy, and you really want to believe this fantasy and make it real. A whole dream begins to form just from our assumptions, and you can believe, oh, this person really likes me. In my mind, a whole relationship begins from that. Maybe you even get married in this fantasy land. But the fantasy is in your mind, in your personal dream. Making assumptions in our relationships is really asking for problems. Often we make the assumption that our partners know what we think and that we don't have to say what we want. We assume they are going to do what we want because they know us so well. If they don't do what we assume they should do, we feel so hurt and say, you should have known. Another example, you decide to get married and you make the assumption that your partner sees marriage the same way you do. Then you live together and find out this is not true. This creates a whole lot of conflict. But you still don't try to clarify your feelings about marriage. The husband comes home from work and the wife is mad, and the husband doesn't know why. Maybe it's because the wife made an assumption. Without telling him what she wants, she makes an assumption that he knows her so well, that he knows what she wants, as if he can read her mind. She gets so upset because he fails to meet her expectations. Making assumptions in relationships leads to a lot of fights, a lot of difficulties, a lot of misunderstandings with people we supposedly love. In any kind of relationship, we can make the assumption that others know what we think and we don't have to say what we want. They're going to do what we want because they know us so well. If they don't do what we want, what we assume they should do, we feel hurt and think, how could you do that? You should know. Again, we make the assumption that the other person knows what we want. A whole drama is created because we make this assumption and then put more assumptions on top of that. What? It is very interesting how human minds work. We have the need to justify everything, to explain and understand everything in order to feel safe. We have millions of questions that need answers because there are so many things that the reasoning mind cannot explain. It is not important if the answer is correct. Just the answer itself makes us feel safe. This is why we make assumptions. If others tell us something, we make assumptions. And if they don't tell us something, we make assumptions to fulfill our need to know and to replace the need to communicate. Even if we hear something and we don't understand, we make assumptions about what it means and then believe the assumptions. We make all sorts of assumptions because we don't have the courage to ask questions. These assumptions are made so fast and so unconsciously most of the time because we have agreements to communicate this way. We have agreed that it is not safe to ask questions. We have agreed that if people love us, they should know what we want or how we feel. When we believe something, we assume we are right about it to the point that we will destroy relationships in order to defend our position. We make the assumption that everyone sees life the way we do. We assume that others think the way we think, feel the way we feel, judge the way we judge, and abuse the way we abuse. This is the biggest assumption that humans make. This is why we have fear of being ourselves around others, because we think everyone else will judge us, victimize us, abuse us, and blame us as we do ourselves. So even before others have the chance to reject us, we have already rejected ourselves. That is the way the human mind works. We also make assumptions that about ourselves, and this creates a lot of inner conflict. I think I'm able to do this. You make this assumption, for instance. Then you discover you aren't able to do it. You overestimate and or underestimate yourself because you haven't taken the time to ask yourself questions and to answer them. Perhaps you need to gather more facts about that a particular situation, or maybe you need to stop lying to yourself about what you truly want. Often when we go into a relationship with someone you like, often when you go into a relationship with someone you like, you have to justify why you like that person. You only see what you want to see, and you deny there are things you don't like about this person. You lie to yourself just to make yourself right. Then you make assumptions, and one of the assumptions is, my love will change this person. But this is not true. Your love will not change anybody. If others change, it's because they want to change, not because you can change them. Then something happens between the two of you and you get hurt. Suddenly you see you don't want to see. You see what you didn't want to see before. Only now it's amplified by your emotional poison. Now you have to justify your emotional pain and blame them for your choices. We don't need to justify love. It is there or it's not there. Love is Real love is accepting other people the way that they are without, excuse me. Real love is accepting other people the way they are without trying to change them. If we try to change them, this means we don't really like them. Of course, if you decide to live with someone, if you make that agreement, it is always better to make the agreement with someone who is actually the way you want him or her to be. So let me say that again. If you decide to live with someone, if you make that agreement, it is always better to make that agreement with someone who is exactly the way you want him or her to be. Find someone whom you don't have to change at all. It is much easier to find someone who is already the way you want him or her to be instead of trying to change that person. Also, that person must love you just the way you are. So he or she doesn't have to change you at all. If others feel they have to change you, that means they really don't love you just the way you are. So why be with somebody if you aren't the way he or she wants you to be? We have to be what we are, so we don't have to present a false image. If you love me the way I am, okay, take me. If you don't love me the way I am, okay, bye-bye. Find somebody else. It may sound harsh, excuse me. But this kind of communication means the personal agreements we make with others are clear and impeccable. Just imagine the day you stop making assumptions with your partner and eventually with everyone else in your life. Your way of communicating will change completely, and your relationship will no longer suffer from conflicts created by mistaken assumptions. The way to keep yourself from making assumptions is to ask questions. Make sure the communication is clear. If you don't understand, ask. Have the courage to ask questions until you are clear as you can be, and even then, do not assume you know all there is to know about a given situation. Once you hear the answer, you will not have to make assumptions because you will know the truth. Also, find your voice to ask for what you want. Every day, everybody has the right to tell you no, or yes. But you always have the right to ask. Likewise, everybody has the right to ask you, and you have the right to say yes or no. If you don't understand something, it is better for you to ask and to be clear instead of making an assumption. The day you stop making assumptions, you will communicate clearly, cleanly, free of emotional poison. Without any assumptions, your word becomes impeccable. With clear communication, all your relationships will change, not only with your partner, but with everyone else. You won't need to make assumptions because everything becomes so clear. This is what I want. This is what you want. If we communicate in this way, our word becomes impeccable. If all humans could communicate in this way, with impeccability of the word, there would be no wars, no violence, no misunderstandings. All human problems would be resolved if we could just have good, clear communication. This then is the third agreement. Don't make assumptions. Just saying this sounds easy, but I understand that it is difficult to do. It is difficult because we so often do exactly the opposite. We have all these habits and routines that we are not even aware of. Becoming aware of these habits and understanding the importance of this agreement is the first step. But understanding its importance is not enough. Information or an idea is merely a seed in the mind. What will really make the difference is action. Taking the action over and over again strengthens your will, nurtures the seed, and establishes a solid foundation for a new habit to grow. After many repetitions, these new agreements will become second nature, and you'll see how the magic of your word transforms you from a black magician into a white magician. A white magician uses the word for creation, giving, sharing, and loving. By making this one agreement a habit, your whole life will be completely transformed. When you transform your whole dream, magic just happens in your life. What you need comes to you easily because spirit moves freely through you. This is the mastery of intent, the mastery of the spirit, the mastery of love, the mastery of gratitude, and the mastery of life. This is the goal of the Toltec. This is the path to personal freedom. All right. So that didn't take very long at all. Let's just reflect a little bit. So when we were when the domestication of humans began, right? The reason why we adopted these belief systems is because our brains assumed that hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people could not be wrong about race, religion, creeds, all this stuff, right? It's always like the few people that think outside the box. Okay, let me use an example. So if you recognize this in yourself, I am totally talking about you. I'm just letting you know that right now. Okay, just being clear. So my last job, I was sales manager at a furniture store, and there is this one employee that I had. This guy asked so many questions. So many questions. And we would get so annoyed. We would be so annoyed that he would ask so many questions. It's like, how can he not draw these conclusions for himself? Because he didn't want to assume that he was always right. He knew that he wasn't right. He knew when he didn't know when he was right and when he was wrong. And if he could circumvent or navigate a situation differently, he was willing to learn. He's willing to not assume that he's always right and that his way was always right. He went from being one of the, and he would beat himself up too. Like if he didn't succeed, then he would beat himself up, beat himself up. You remember, judge, jury, executioner. He was all three of those to himself. But one thing that he was really good at was never making an assumption. He never assumed that that the customer just wasn't going to buy. He never assumed that he knew everything about everything, and that is a characteristic that is admirable. This is the type of person that's going to sit down with you at the beginning of a relationship when you've decided that you want to be in relation with that person and really hash out what it is that you want for your dream so that he can align his dream with your dream. How can I make her happy? How can I make her day easier? How can I um, how can we have more quality time? How can, where can I be better so that I can be the best possible version of myself for you and vice versa? How can we feed one another? The only way that we can do that is if we don't make assumptions. So gossiping is just a bunch of fucking assumptions, excuse my language again, balled up, spun around, tossed to another person, tossed to another person, tossed to another person. And every time someone did y'all ever play this that game with the water balls, right? And you play with them at the lake and stuff, and they flow at the top of the water, and you throw them across, and when it hits that person, it splashes water all over them, right? That's what a gossip ball looks like. Is a imaginary splat of poison, acid on the person that you toss that gossip ball to. So let's just like not assume that we know anything about anything. I'm kind of overdoing any of that personally. Um, I have a purpose. You don't have to know what that purpose is. That purpose is between me and my God. You could assume that I'm doing this, that, and the third, but I know exactly what I'm doing and how I'm going to get there. Now, if you want to know, ask. If you want to know what it is, then ask. I'll be more than happy to chat with you about it. Now, tomorrow, we're going to talk about the fourth agreement and wrap up this whole book. I'm so excited. This has been such a blessing for me in my life. It's helped me really course correct myself in the last week and a half. And I feel the blessings coming. I know life is going to get a little bit harder before it gets better, but I'm not going to make the assumption that it's going to be hard. I'm just going to be impeccable with my word and not take anything personally and not make any assumptions about anything. That's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to trust the process, man. But until tomorrow, I hope you guys enjoy your day. And as always, it's been a blessing to talk with you. And this has been the Conversations with Lotus.